Right, in this video I figured I'd show you guys how to make a patch panel. So I'm going to use the plasma cutter. You can use whatever you want. You can use a cutoff wheel or whatever and cut out this rusted out area. And then I'm also going to cut off some other things real quick. So I'll run you guys through that and then I'll show you how I make them. I've already got this piece of metal that I just kind of had already cleaned and bent. So I'm going to use it and then we'll show you how to do a butt weld on that. All right, so stay tuned. All right, so now what I do next on this particular situation, I've got this piece already bent. So I'll back it up behind it if you can. You know, you do it wherever you can do it. If you can trace it, that's always the best thing. And then just take your Sharpie and trace. So I've got this end here butted, okay? And then this end I know I've got to cut so that, you know, this is butted down here and this is overlapped right here. So I know that this line is not going to be exactly right, but I need all of that line to show because, so I need to cut just outside of this line, and I'll just do that with my scissors here, my shear. I'll show you in a second. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up this edge. It's a little ragged right here. And then I'm going to start massaging this with a grinder. I'm going to use this cordless grinder because it's easier, no cords. And I'm going to use a flap wheel. And I'm going to clean this up and I'm going to fit this into that other piece as close as I can. Let's see how I do. All right, so I got it pretty close. Obviously, it's sitting there, barely. But, you know, if you made a little bit too wide of a gap, which I did on the bottom edge, you just got to be a little bit better at filling in the welds. And if you use the technique that I'm going to show you, it'll help you kind of figure that out. Now, what I like to do is use a magnet. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to feel my finger along here. I'm going to feel for the area that is perfect. When I rub my finger over here, I don't feel anything that I could catch my fingernail on. That's where I'm going to start. So I know, so it doesn't have to be perfectly set, but so wherever it's perfectly flat, that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to do a little spot right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it as I go. I'm going to kind of do a spot here. I'm going to do a spot here, wherever that I can get it to be perfectly flat, okay? Because if it's just a little tiny bit off, when you go to butt it, what happens is if it's a little tiny bit off, and when you go to grind your weld, and if you didn't penetrate all the way through as well, you're going to weaken the area. So it does weaken it. That's why I like to, if you can, if there's a place where you can, like if you're in a fender well, you're in a place where there's a blind side to the other side of it. This particular side has both sides exposed, so I need to butt weld this. So I could do it with a lap and just have filler on both sides, and that would work too. So if you're brand new, you might want to try doing lap welding, even using a thinner gauge metal and just lap welding it. You know, that works. But what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to go ahead and butt this. And I felt right here, it looks like it's in the right place. I'm going to check it again before I weld it. And when I weld, so I won't be able to really show you welding because it's just too bright. It doesn't show up in the camera, but I'll show you after. So when I weld, I'm going to not just try and spot right on the corner. I'm going to weld from this one, get something finer here. So I'm going to start up here, and then I'm going to weld down just barely above so that I know I'm on this surface, and then I'm going to weld over to this surface. I'm not going to weld this direction. I'm going to weld top to bottom. So when you butt weld, you're always going from this surface to this surface. You're making sure you get both of them wet, both of them hot. And so you want to make sure you weld from here to here, here to here, here to here. So butt welding is a series of spot welding. So you're doing a spot next to a spot, next to a spot, next to a spot, next to a spot, and they all connect together. So you use like a C motion. You go from this one to your spot back to this one. So a little bit of a C is going on in there as well. So I'll show you a little bit. I'll do a little section and I'll kind of walk you through it. So these are the settings I'm going to start with on the Harbor Freight Titanium 140. If you're using this welder, that might help you kind of get a baseline. This is 20 gauge steel, and I'm welding into a 19 gauge area, so it's going to be, you know, it's 19 gauge original. They don't make that anymore. 20 gauge is what's available, so let's weld it in. So there's my first little spot. Okay, so my wire speed might be up just a little bit fast because I'm moundy. So it's funny, you know, you'll do it one time and it works great in one setting, and then the next time sometimes it's a little different. Okay, and this one here I didn't quite get on there. Let me put another one right next to that one and get that one on all the way. All right, so I've got a few on there, and every one of them I just have to stop, let it cool a little bit, and check so that I can touch it and make sure that my finger doesn't rub and feel an edge. Now this one I feel an edge on, so what I'm going to do now is take my hammer, and I'm going to use the shrinking dolly, and I'm going to put it right here, and I'm going to give that a little tap. I like on flat metal to use a shrinking dolly. Right here it feels good, but up here it feels a little bit of an edge. So maybe I'll actually use a clamp to hold it where I want it. So literally has to be pretty darn perfect. Okay? That's why I don't butt weld unless I need to. Let's give that a little spot and take a look. Alright, so that one I missed a little bit. That's alright, we got a grinder here. You can always clean it up with a grinder. It's not trying to look perfect, just trying to get it to work. People get frustrated. This side's the same thing. I still have to line it up real nice and perfect. Small repair like this could take you a couple hours. Could you imagine doing your whole car this way? And it takes days. So this one I want to get lined up. I'm going to go ahead and line it up probably with these. Again, I have to let it cool so I can touch it to feel it, to make sure it's right. I'll give that a little more love tap. I'll bring you back in. I'll go ahead and weld that one in. I'll show you next. Alright, so got that all tacked in. Of course I miss a little bit because I can't see very good. The older guys, it's a little harder. When you're young, your eyes are better. Good for you guys. So what I'm going to do is now, again, what I'm going to do is what I need to do is do a spot weld next to this one, a spot weld next to that one, a spot weld next to this one, a spot weld, and just work my way around. But being that this is a really small patch, and there's not a lot of metal to warp here, I can probably do a little bit more than that. Usually what I can do, once you get a little bit better, you'll start out with just doing a spot weld right next to that one, and one right next to this one, right next to that one, and you want the weld to go from this metal to the weld, and then to this metal. So you make like a C, okay? Little C, little C, little C, little C, little C, all the way around, and you do that evenly throughout a panel and give it a little chance to cool. Some guys blow it with air. You can do that if you really are worried about it warping. You can blow with some air between welds. It takes a lot longer, but again, that's just another way to do it. That's up to you if you want to do that. Some guys take a wet rag and cool it, as they do it. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Some guys put putty on both sides of here and then just weld a little bit, and that keeps the other metal from getting hot. They have a putty called, I think I have some, I don't know where it's at right now, but I definitely do. And you can put that putty on both sides and then weld slowly. That's what we used to use back in the old days when you had to torch weld stuff. So it was a little different then. But so what I'm going to do myself is to save myself some time. I'm going to do like a little bit more than a spot weld. So I'm going to go about, and if you're a little bit better at it, you can do that too. So I'm going to go like 1/4 of an inch, okay? And then I stop. Because if I go any more than 1/4 of an inch, I'll start burning through. So if you do too much, you end up burning through, and then you end up filling a bunch of holes, and that's a little bit of a challenge. When you do a hole fill, you're going to burn through. So let's say you burn through. What you want to do is spot, spot, spot around in a circle until you get weld all the way around the circle, and then just start doing circles until you hit the middle, and then it'll fill it in if you have your settings right. And you might have to turn your wire speed up a little bit to do that. So again, we're a little bit moundy. I might turn it down just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to leave it right where it is because I'm going to do a little bit longer weld than you guys would do. So I'll do a set of them, then I'll bring you back in a second, show you kind of how I do it. All right, so that's my first pass. For me, you guys, it'll be a little bit slower the first time doing it. Don't go too far. It'll just get you. You'll be unhappy. And the worst, if you don't know where you're at, or you've got places in your weld, just take your grinder and give it a little grind and take a look at it. Sometimes you can get on the back side of the panel. Just look for daylight openings, kind of mark them in your head, and then come back and hit this side again. So anyway, I'm going to make another pass. I'll make a couple more passes. We'll make one more real quick, and then we'll just take a look at it. Real quick look, and then we're going to do again, and then I'll show you. That'll be about it. All right, for me, that's my next pass. Next one, let's take a look at it. All right, so not very pretty, but it will hold good. I can grind this down. I did get a little bit of warpage, and that's because, again, I did longer welds because I'm impatient. And if you were more patient, you could do just spot weld, spot weld, spot weld, cool it with the hot air, with blow in with air, or just let it cool. It takes a lot more time, but like I said, I got a lot of repairs to do on this thing. I can't be doing that. So what I'll do is let's grind it down and we'll take a look at it. What do you think? All right, so let's take a look here. We're looking pretty good. I did get a little bit of warpage. If you see here, it did warp just a little bit, and I can easily straighten that. I'll just get in there with the hammer and a shrinking dolly and just hit that and knock it a few times. That's why I wasn't really worried about that, about welding too much at a time on that patch. I already have a way to straighten this. It's really not that far off at all. Just like I said, a little bit of hammer work usually is the case, and you still got to do filler. Now, if you did your work right, you're going to see almost looks like a weld on the other side. So that's good penetration. It's all the way through. I don't see any voids in it. No daylight areas. It's just maybe in the very corner. But I'm actually going to, that's probably because there's a little bit of a rust issue there. And some of that I'm actually going to use something called epoxy putty on, because I already know I would have to cut this whole top off, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just repairing it, and then I'm going to do some repair sections, some other things in my other videos. But I just wanted to do one video on this particular subject because it seems like something everybody's interested in, and it might help you do your projects if you want to do butt welding. And a lot of people are more interested in this than they are laps. Laps are actually a great way to do repairs, and also some people use the bead roller to make a little stair step and then put the lap over the other one. That works as well. You can lap and just pound it low. That works as well too. It just depends on the repair you're doing. So this is how you butt weld. I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.